Hey, seventh graders. It's our last YouTube video. Woo! May 21st, 2020. It's a new century, a new decade. It's the decade you guys were born in. So it's close to you guys. And we're in modern history, very current events. Two things I want to mention about the 2000s, besides you guys being born in that decade. We begin a war on terrorism. This is the global war on terrorism. In 2001, the Twin Towers in New York City are bombed, flown into, and destroyed, and it begins a global war on terror. We hadn't been attacked in our own country since Pearl Harbor, and so it was a startling, disorienting time, and it began two wars. The first war was in Afghanistan. I'll talk about that in just a second. But in 2003, we began a war in Iraq. It was believed that Saddam Hussein had weapons of mass destruction. He was the leader of Iraq, and there you see a statue coming down. And it turned out not to be the case. He didn't have those weapons of mass destruction, at least not the kind that we thought that he had. And we overthrew the government in Iraq, and it's still not completely stable to this day. There are many different groups, powers that are vying for control in that country still. The other war that was started was the Afghanistan War, the war in Afghanistan. This is where Osama bin Laden, the leader of Al-Qaeda, went to after the bombings. He was somewhere on the border between Afghanistan and Pakistan, and we didn't know exactly where he was. We were hot on his trail, but then got derailed in the war in Iraq. This is a map of Afghanistan in 2019. The pink sections on this map are controlled by the government of Afghanistan and NATO forces. That's partly us. And the white areas are areas that are outside of their control, areas that are very, not major cities, but they're mountainous areas. They don't have a lot of people, and those areas too are under control of Al-Qaeda or something like Al-Qaeda today. So we're still struggling in Afghanistan. It's a current war. It's our longest war that we've ever been in as a country. We're going on almost 20 years now, and we continue to talk about how to get out of it. It's lots of different problems in getting out of Afghanistan, and you can do some research on that. But it's something that your generation will still be dealing with. So we have two wars that come from the war on terrorism. We've got the war in Iraq, and then this current war that we're still fighting, the war in Afghanistan, where many soldiers still are stationed. The other big thing that comes out of the first decade of the 21st century is what they've now called the Great Recession. It starts in 2007, 2008, and it is focused around the housing market. So sometimes you'll hear the Great Recession and the housing bubble, those ideas linked. You can see in the graph that I've got here that just generally the trend of population was going up in the United States, and building costs have gone up. But the one thing that went up really high at the very end of the 20th century and into the 21st century was the price of houses. And this led to a lot of people buying houses that they couldn't really afford because they thought, well, the price of houses are going to go way up and it's a great investment. If I buy a house for really high, that's okay because in 10 years it's going to be worth a lot more and I could sell it and make a profit. And they thought that those housing prices were never going to drop, and they spiked really high for a little bit, and they thought this was a time to invest your money in buying houses. But that was a artificial increase in the price of houses, not really one that could be warranted by the sort of the trend. It was sort of in some ways just a quick little blip, and people use that blip to predict that if housing market's going to be a great place to invest all your money, buy houses as expensive as you can. Doesn't matter, because the next 10 years the prices will keep on going up, and you can sell that house and make money. It doesn't matter how much you spend on a house. You could never lose money on buying a house. Well, that wasn't the case in 2008. The housing market crashed. A lot of people lost a lot of money. People owed money on houses that now were not as worth as much as that they'd taken out loans for. So just for an example, if you bought a house for $300,000 and now it's only worth $200,000, you're paying a loan on a house that's not worth what you're paying the loan on. You've taken a loan out for $300,000. The house is only worth $200,000. That's a bad deal. And so a lot of people found themselves in those kind of deals, and they wanted to get out of it. And a lot of people just left their homes. They couldn't afford their homes anymore, and it was led to a government bailout, the 2008, 2009 bailout. And in some ways, it's still connected today, because we just recently got a bailout. The government has used this new policy of, if there's a crisis, the government can intervene and provide money for those that are struggling. And because it seemed to work in 2008, it was tried again now in 2020, and we'll see if it works for the current crisis that we're in. But those are the two main things that come from the first decade of the 21st century: the age of terrorism and the war on terror. Our ongoing war in Afghanistan is something we're still dealing with, and the housing market bust in 2008 led to government intervention, and the government intervened in the most recent crisis in the similar kind of way. So those are some lasting legacies from that decade. All right, guys, see you tomorrow. Have a fun fact.